Now we got the last segment before lunch, and it's an exciting segment because it's the research talks. With rapid fire, we'll have researchers giving us insights that are so beneficial to the future work that we want to develop together. We're going to first have the finest from Nordregio. We got Carlos Tapia, who's going to talk about the green transition and what does it mean for cities, regions, people, and last but not least, the environment and the climate. Please give Carlos Tapia a very warm hand.
Thank you all. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to be talking now about a bit more uncomfortable topic, which is discontent and the relation with the green transition. This is part of the work that we have done in the ENIC project together with several colleagues whose name I would like to mention here also because they have been working hard on this project. So it's Kamila Zavatova, sorry about the pronunciation, Gustav Norlien, Anna Lundgren, who's somewhere here, Miriam Schilberts, and Nora Sanchez-Gassen, who have been working with me on this project. So a paper published in 2023 by two researchers called Rhodes and Party described the 2010s as an age of discontent in Western liberal democracies. And they flagged two main characteristics of this time, being mass protests in different regions of the world, and also a shift on electoral behavior in many liberal democracy systems. They also proposed a narrative or a framework to analyze these processes, which they called affective political economy, which essentially tried to combine the economic level with a more emotional perspective. So if we pay attention to some of the events that took place in Europe during the last 10 years, we could confirm this narrative of the age of discontent. Only taken from 2014 to 2024, we see events like the Ukrainian Revolution, the refugee crisis, the Spanish constitutional crisis. We also see the Romanian protests against the government, the Yellow Vests, the Brexit, etc. So that kind of confirms this narrative, but we don't see that kind of processes, luckily, in a Nordic context, where things seem to be calmer. Actually, in the 2020 report, the edition of the World Happiness Report, the authors include a section about the Nordic exceptionalism. And they describe why the Nordic region as a whole tends to rank higher in all of these rankings of the most or the happiest countries in the world. They mention issues like quality of institutions, like generous welfare states, well-functioning systems, trust between individuals and towards institutions, and also psychological factors like a higher degree of sense of autonomy and freedom in this region compared to others. But we still see the other phenomenon. So we also see a mutation, some shifts on the electoral systems in our region as well, particularly when it comes to populist voting or abstentions, which is the two ways in which people express their disagreement on a political level. They withdraw from politics or they vote for more extremist, populist political options. So we have created this classification of municipalities at the Nordic level where we compare where we combine these two perspectives to showcase which municipalities are showing more propensity towards expressing electoral discontent by comparing their patterns locally with the national average. So what you see is a map for 2023. The greener colors, sorry, the red colors represent municipalities where there's a higher propensity to vote for populist parties or abstaining in the national election, and the bluish color represent the other situation, the opposite situation. And this is going to be the variable that we are going to be trying to understand why and how it distributes spatially and non-spatially the way that it does. But what is motivating this age of discontent or these expressions of discontent? In our report published earlier this year, Geographies of Discontent in Nordic region, we shed some light into these patterns. And we show how there's essentially two main narratives that tend to describe or try to describe these processes. One is the economic gap narrative, where the emphasis is put more on the economic conditions, living conditions of households, and how that then impacts their degree of discontent. And another one is more related to the emotions, to the values, to the perceptions that people have on the events that are surrounding them, that is called the recognition gap. So these two narratives might be actually describing overall how people feel or what motivates these discontent aspects, but also both of them put a lot of emphasis on other compositional aspects, demographic, sociological aspects that are describing those populations that are experiences these processes in different ways. To those four big categories of factors or narratives, we have added a fourth one, which is the one that is most important to us on this project, which is the green transition. There's very little knowledge on what is the actual connection or association between green policies and social discontent, and that was actually what we were trying to map. And talking about maps, this is exactly what we have been trying to do. We've mapped all these variables that have been mentioned before: sociological, demographic, compositional, economic, etc. And we have tried to understand how they relate to this with this phenomenon of electoral discontent. Something that we are also trying to do in parallel to this more quantitative work is trying to dig a bit deeper into this recognitional gap narrative by running a series of interviews with managers from municipalities across the Nordics, where we are trying to learn or to investigate a bit more in depth those other more qualitative aspects. But I would like to just show a couple of slides on the green transition element and why we think this could be important. First of all, if you look at emissions, you see that roughly half of the CO2 emissions at the Nordic level are localized or originate from very specific places, which is essentially the circles that you see on the screen: large industrial facilities included in the European Transfer and Release Registry. And you also see that also when you consider emissions coming from non-localized sources like transport or even from residential, there's also a huge difference between regions. So we thought that this could be affecting in some way the degree to which people living in those areas might be accepting the green agenda, and indirectly also the degree of discontent. And if you look at this also from the perspective of the number of green jobs that are available in each region, there's also a huge difference. The classification that you see now on the screen is based on the OECD classification that defines green jobs as occupations that contribute significantly to preserve or restore environmental quality, typically involving sectors like renewable energy, resource efficiency, and pollution reduction. So we are talking about a very synthetic and very specific classification of regions, of jobs that are genuinely contributing to the environment. Still, we are talking about 25% of total employment at the Nordic level, and even higher rates in some regions. So we also thought that this could be affecting these processes of social discontent in various ways. On the positive side, it could be that the people benefiting already from these jobs could be more satisfied with the current climate agenda, or it could also be the other way around, that people being on front-running businesses that sometimes carry higher risks, for example, we've seen that in Northvolt, could be more disaffected by these processes. So what we have done essentially is trying to model this on a simple regression setup. What you see now is coefficient plots from regression, where the dependent variable is the electoral behavior, and the independent variables are those predictors that you see on the on this axis. So all the indicators that we were talking about before classified in big groups. So for example, we have territorial aspects with the territorial typology that we have created at Nordregio. With the Nordic coverage, we have compositional factors, age groups, gender ratios, share of foreign-born, educational attainment levels, employment, inequalities and living conditions, regional economic indicators, and then green transition indicators, mostly emissions, green jobs, and carbon intensity of the employment. So in order to read this plot properly, you should also look at the coefficient estimates here. Each of these points summarize the coefficient estimate for one predictor, in this case, a university degree, and the bars that extend from the points show the confidence interval. So essentially, you should look at the points like this one that are far from the central line, and whatever confidence interval overlaps that line means that it's not significant. To simplify even more this kind of logic, you should be looking at points that are on the positive or negative side, but not on the central part. And even to try to guide a bit more this interpretation, I've added a few arrows here that show if the effect is positive, negative, or neutral. Positive in this case means that the predictor contributes to increase electoral discontent, and negative means the opposite. It's not a term or an adjective that I've chosen because to suggest that it's beneficial or detrimental. It's just to show the direction of the effect. So, interesting findings. On the territorial level, what we see is that in relation to inner urban areas, which is the reference here, people living in intermediate mid-sized cities tend to be more prone to vote for populist parties or abstaining from election compared to cities, but more interested into rural heartland and sparsely populated rural areas where people are also more conservative on the voting behavior. On the compositional and demographic factors, we don't have a lot of confidence on these age classifications because there's a lot of multicollinearity that we need to solve with this. So I wouldn't pay much attention to the age, to the compositional part of this analysis, other than comparing the effect between different groups. So for example, the 2039 group and the 6079 group, wherever these populations are overrepresented in the municipality, it shows that the result, the outcome is probably a greater propensity to vote for this or to express electoral discontent as compared to municipalities where over 80 or younger groups are present. But the most interesting part of this analysis is what comes next. First of all, gender ratio and share foreign born are both significant, even though the coefficients are very small. Primary education, secondary education, and university degree, primary and university degree are also very significant. And in the case of the university degree, there's a strong negative effect, which means that the higher the educated, the less propension to express electoral discontent, which makes sense, but it has a probably tricky interpretation. Probably it's not related to the to obtaining the title itself, but rather to the indirect benefit of getting a better occupation, for example, that is causing this effect. We also see that there's a consistent effect of unemployment rate and an activity rate. So the higher the unemployment rate and the lower the activity rate, the more propension to vote for, to express electoral discontent. Then we have also a group of regional economic indicators that surprisingly are not significant at all. And finally, we see that the green part of the analysis, which is very important for us, shows mixed results. So the presence of a large emitting facility in the municipality or the surroundings seems to be negatively correlated with the outcome, which means that it would suggest that people living in those settings would have lower propensity to vote or to express electoral discontent, whereas the proportion of getting jobs goes on the opposite direction. Now, next steps for us are to control a little bit for this multicollinearity here and try to improve the model in general to have more stable results, and also to continue working on this part of the analysis, which is more the recognitional gap analysis, the interviews. And I would like to end the presentation with this slide, with a few quotes from the people that we are already interviewing. Some of them actually deny that there's any level of discontent in their municipalities. Those that recognize or acknowledge that there is some kind of degree of discontent mention that the cause is the national politics, not what's going on in the municipality. Others go a bit beyond that and mention maybe the discontinuation of some public services as being a potential cause for the discontent in the municipalities. And finally, there's also, when it comes to actually the green part of this, so the green transition questions on the interviews, that raise two types of justice or justice-related issues. The first one is more the distributional aspect, not in my backyard issues. Why should we cope with the impacts of renewable green projects in our beautiful rural area when this energy will be consumed in cities? And another aspect that is coming up more frequently is the recognitional aspect and procedural aspect. They should, these projects, these new investments should acknowledge that we living in this area should have a say in the process. And that's all from our side. Thank you, and really hoping for a fruitful discussion now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Carlos. I know there's many questions for you, and the good thing is that for all of us here, you are also here. And when we thought that, wow, I would love to dig into that, your presentations is going to be shared. And also, of course, we can see the go back and see the presentation once again. Thank you so much, Carlos. I just want to bring with us specifically that when there was a lot of green jobs, people were sort of less excited about it. What's your view on that?
Well, if you ask me to bet my kudos on one single potential cause of discontent, I would say labor conditions, labor markets. I think that people are in some of those green jobs that essentially are waste management, renewable energy construction, resource efficiency. These kind of jobs tend to be less certain, less stable, less secure than jobs in, for example, traditional industries that might be large emitters, but in general offer better working conditions. Chemical industry, for example, right. Oil and gas. So I think that is the real reason why we see these patterns. It's not that people, where there's a large emitting facility, are more favorable to the green transition as such, is that they have better conditions and they probably have less reasons to be discontent or express discontent.
Makes sense. And this really was a, dip your finger or dip your toe to understand that this is something that we want to dig deeper into to understand better how to work with this phenomena. Thank you once again so much, Carlos.
Thank you.